as well, so I can upload the session to YouTube you to watch back. Sean's joining us. Hi, Sean. You okay?
How are you, David?
How's your day going?
Too bad. To do with the haircut, that's my big problem.
I don't have that problem, so. I'm sure the hairdressers are going to open on about the 15th, aren't they? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So that should be, what's that, a week on Monday or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So what I thought we could talk about today is just a few of the issues or some of the stuff that's crept up in people's sessions. So one of the things that came up this week, and I think this was mainly for you, Phil, was the consistency of right-hand fingerings.
Yeah.
And being really consistent in your approach to learning. So just making sure that each time you're practicing and playing a piece that you're using the same right-hand fingerings. So do you want to just expand on that a little bit more, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you take on higher grades, that you can't get away with just playing the way you want to do, basically. So you have to follow the pattern. And the fingering in the left hand is pretty clear. So once you work that out, you can play the music. But what you've got to do is to match that with your right hand, and it's not easy because you're doing two things at once, which is what you always do playing a guitar. But you've got to remember which fingers to play. And it's a logical thing. Because in theory, David, your bass notes are with your thumb, or P. So you've got E, A, and D. And then your G, B, and E are with your I, F, and A. And it's a complicated thing, and it's really driving me bonkers, really, because it's really hard. You know, if you don't do it right from the beginning, then you've got to go back and relearn it all. And so attention to detail, a bar at a time, get it right and move on. And, I do find it hard. In grade 8 now, I don't know whether Sean agrees with me or not, but it's really coming into its own now. The stakes are high.
Sean, do you want to jump in there and add something, add some insight about how you stick to using the same right hand pattern within pieces you're learning, or scales, or whatever it may be?
The only thing I'll say about it now is that it's more critical. The stuff I'm doing now is that I have a right hand practice session. I don't have two hands sometimes. It's just all about one hand or the other. Because trying to get the both of them working together when they're not rehearsed enough on their own, it's very difficult. So we've been through quite a number of times, and you've given me a lot of right hand exercises to do, which I do in warm up now, just to get the individual fingers moving automatically, because when I first started off, it was very easy. Your thumb seems to take care of everything if you want to let it, and particularly on the bass strings with your fingers, it doesn't come naturally, and it's working just your right hand. Forget about your left hand in some practice sessions. Just take on right hand exercises so that your fingers become natural and they do things automatically without having to think about it.
Just to jump in there, Sean, one of the things I had to do in my playing was ration my thumb, so to speak. So by rationing the thumb, you work in your fingers more, because like you say, it can feel unnatural, should I say, for the fingers to be playing on the bass strings. So again, going back to scales, you can combat that by working at a lot of scales. And I know, Phil, you're doing the Segovia ones, which are a good thing to practice, because you're doing a lot of the different combinations of fingers on the bass strings as well there, aren't you? So
yeah, I mean, to let people know, it's basically 7 different patterns of using I, M, and A to play one scale. So, and these are sometimes, 2 and 3 octaves. So it's very complicated to, because your muscle memory initially, I and M, thinks that it's going to play that for every single one, but you've got to do it 7 different ways, and it's really hard. I mean, it's easy to throw the guitar through the window and go and watch TV afterwards. So after you've been sticking at that for about half an hour, but okay. I know that the end degree will be that I'll be able to play better. Can I just raise something, a small point, David?
Yeah, of course, can you?
I mean, the lock-in has created all sorts of issues from a guitarist point of view. I'm speaking personally, so I'm 74, and I've been playing classical for about 6.5 years now. Before that, I used to play an electric guitar, so I was cheating. I used a plexus. The first thing about classical is you need a footstool or a guitar, what do you call it? Guitarno, is it? Guitar? No. It's a little clip thing that you stick on the side of the guitar. And what I've noticed is in this last 3 months that I'm getting really terrible backache, and having my foot up on a footstool for hours on end is not good. So I've now reverted to the Guitarno clip on the side of the guitar, and it's a lot better. And I wonder if anybody else is suffering from a sort of a physical fatigue of playing the guitar for hours on end during lockdown, and wondering if they've got any aches and pains from it. What do you think?
Phil, can I share something with you here?
Yeah.
Okay. Just raise your hands if you've heard of the Alexander technique.
I think I have, yeah.
Do you know what it's about, Phil? Have you?
I only know it by name. I've not really gone into any details on it.
Okay.
But I think a lot of different music students use this, don't they?
Not only music students. There's a lot of actors, a lot of sports professionals work with Alexander techniques, and I think most music universities would have a Alexander teacher there. But basically, it's all about posture and how you use your body. Okay, so that might be. I don't want to go too much into that here, Phil, but it might be worth having a look at that and doing some research, because if you're getting pain in your back, it could be just the way you're sitting with the guitar.
Might be old age as well.
that might play some factor there, but
Hi.
So basically it's about posture and how you use your body it's how you're sitting with the instrument, should I say, and how you're approaching that. Sometimes what can happen is we grab the guitar or hold the guitar, and it's kind of, we see the guitar as the first instrument and the body is the second, where kind of the Alexander technique is about you're the first instrument and the guitar's the second, and you bring the guitar to you. And Craig's really, if you watch Craig Dognan at this, he sits down and he's got really great posture. Then the guitar comes to him like this, and it gives an air of authority, when he plays. But some of the other players, you can see they're like hunched over and kind of really just look at the fretboard and all this stuff. So not to go into too much of it now, but if you want to research that, do have a look at the Alexander technique.
Okay.
There's a great book on it by this cellist called Pablo. I can't think of his last name. I'll let you know in your lessons. But he's a cellist who studied the Alexander technique, and it's more relatable for musicians. But sorry, I can't remember the name of the book. But anyway, cool. So that might help you there, Phil.
Cheers,
Just dialing it back a little bit, when you said, you've got 7 different ways of playing a scale, patterns, should I say. So how do you manage that? And how do you manage those emotions where you say you feel like putting the guitar through the window?
Well, it's just that I've invested in the music. I bought the scales last week or so, and sort of arrived, and it's a commitment, isn't it? You just basically start off with I am. So that's what we do all the time with all the scales for the grades. But I think what I've got to do is stop doing IMI. I've got to start doing, for example, IA, IAI. So that's you're missing your middle finger out completely. So to play a scale with your index finger and your ring finger is quite difficult, really. And you just have to start slowly and just muscle memory. That's the key. And when you've got that one up to speed, then you can move on to another one. But to try and play them all at once in one go, I find it's quite hard.
Okay. So would a good approach to this be picking, say, was it M and A? And just
and I and M.
And just having that as a focus for 1 week. So I'm not going to play the other 6. I'm just going to take M and A or I and A, whichever one it was. I'm just going to focus on that for a week. Do you think that would decrease the stress levels around doing them all?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, the illustration I always remember is that somebody said, if you want to play a guitar, you can play an electric guitar in 2 hours, and it'll probably take you 10 years to play a classical. And the reason for that is that it's because everything has got an order, and you just have patience with it. Whereas an electric guitar, you basically stick the jack plug in it and just turn the volume up, and you can play as much as you want. It's an easy way of doing it, but it's discipline, really. There's really no excuse. If you're going to do the work, you've got to do it, haven't you? So I'm looking forward to it, because I know my fingers will be much suppler, and it'll help my playing.
Okay.
I don't want to hog the show today, incidentally.
That's okay. So let's move on. So Chris, do you want to tell us a bit about what you've been practicing this week?
Been practicing scales quite a lot. Again, just doing I and M alternation. I sometimes find I keep doubling up. I kind of go over 2 octaves, come down, and I know I've got wrong because I'm on the wrong finger, and I've got to figure out how if I don't concentrate, physically start counting I, M, or whatever, if I do it without thinking, sometimes I must be doubling up somewhere. So I don't know what the answer to that is, except more practice, maybe.
I would say to that, and feel free to jump in as well, anybody else who wants to add to this, I'd say practicing really slow.
Yeah.
So you want to practice at the speed that you're aware and you have the control to consistently get the alternation. Okay, and that's what I call your base speed. So once you find that base speed and you can play the scale consistently with I and M, then you start to think about gradually increasing the speed. And I think, Phil, we talked about this in your lesson, that if you have an inconsistency with your right hand, that'll show up in the music that you're playing. So if you want to find consistency in your music, be really consistent in your practice and the way that you're approaching that, and the way that the fingers you're using. So always being consistent.
I think what I would say, Chris, is that why not look at your right hand as you're playing it? If play a simple scale, one that you know, without having to look at the left hand. And I've done this, and I've done exactly what you do. You start off on I and you end up on A. So, or M or whatever. So basically, you'll know where you're going wrong if you keep looking at it. You play it slowly, just keep looking at your right hand, and you can see it straight away. Or imagine playing the scale. Don't play anything with your left hand. Have it open strings, and write the down on the music, and just put I am.
Well, funny enough, we actually I started with David with some open string exercises. Yeah. And after a bit, I weren't too bad on those because I knew what strings I should have been on. As I went across the strings, I knew what finger should be on, and oddly, I didn't get lost though after a bit of practice. But then thought, great, applies these to scales over 2 octaves. Maybe I'm concentrating on the shift and where to the left hand, and maybe I should be concentrating more on the right hand.
Okay.
What do you think, David?
Yeah, definitely. You want what it sounds like your left hand, Chris, is a little bit more developed than your right. Am I true?
Yeah,
Is that true to say?
Yeah, it is really,
Yeah.
because I think we've talked about I feel uncomfortable when we're at it, not playing the notes, but being consistent with the fingers. You know, at times I feel I'm kind of just guessing what finger to. I know what note to play, but I kind of guess what finger to use.
Okay. So in your practice of scales, Chris, really slow down and be mindful of what finger you're using, and keep that really consistent, and that will reflect in the songs you play.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
The other thing, something Phil was saying about aches and pains, after a couple of hours, I get my left thumb aches from being behind the neck. I don't know if I'm in the wrong position, pressing too hard. It takes a couple of hours, but I can actually feel my thumb tingling after a couple of hours or so.
Okay.
So,
just one thing there, Chris. What might be happening is when you're playing, you could be pushing into the strings too much.
right.
So, in other words, you're using too much effort
Too much pressure, yeah.
So you want just enough pressure to get the note to sound. So there's two ways you can do this, and I'll show you more of this in your lesson. I'll just explain it here. Is to play the scale or your piece where you're not actually pushing the string down. You just placing the fingers. So it'll sound horrible because you're not actually getting any notes. You just putting the fingers there. So that's the first stage. And the next stage is to push down a little bit more until you get a buzz. So you purposefully aiming to get buzzes on the notes, and then from a buzz to an actual sounding the note is not very much, and that'll start to get the correct amount of pressure. Is that okay?
Yeah, you might be right. You know, I've only found this because I'm practicing more now, and you think, well, I'm practicing more, my hand should be used to it, but ironically, I kind of it feels like I've started playing guitar again because my thumb. My fingers are not too bad, it's just my thumb.
So just one more thing before we move on is another thing, and this is from John Williams, what one of his tips is to actually practice without the thumb on the back of the neck. And what this does is you use more of the upper muscle here rather than the smaller muscles of the hand.
Press it in with your fingers onto the...
Yeah. Rather than using all the muscles here in your thumb, you're using more upper body muscles. Okay, so then it's relieving a lot of the stress on the thumb.
Yeah.
All right, okay, Mike, you're next on the video here. So, any struggles this week, Mike, and with any of you playing?
I think I've not done enough, like I should do. But I don't. This week, I think from where I'm still stationary for a while, and one of those weeks when you don't think you can forward. Although I missed fast, I've improved on my metronome. Like I've gone up, so it's improving.
So you've seen progress in your speed there.
Yeah. That's about all, I think.
So I'm just curious here, Mike. So you said you feel like you've not done enough practice. When do you know it's enough?
It's just as I've been. To me, it's when it's nice. I end up doing jobs in the garden, so it's better for rain. If it rains, then I see the house.
So you see like your practice going up and your improvements when the weather's not great, when it's raining. Yeah. Okay. So that's, we do live in a country where the weather varies quite a lot, doesn't it? So you probably are going to get more rain than sun. And so the thing you could do there is to, even though if it's nice and you're doing jobs, is just schedule a little bit of time in the morning. Just think I'm going to sit down this morning and maybe do like 10 or 15 minutes before I do the jobs.
I find it boring now because there's nothing on the telly, is there? So like I might do 7 till 9. Like a good.
Sorry, Mike. Sorry, I think the sound's just cutting out there. Sorry, could you say that again?
I seem to do more at night. Like
More
between 8, like 7 and 9, or 7 and 8.
And that's
Because
at night.
Yeah, there's nothing on telly. So.
And if it is, it's being repeated, isn't it? So.
Well,
okay.
David,
Cool. Yeah.
David, sorry, can I just make an advert? So tonight on BBC 4 at 7 o'clock is John Williams on for an hour, and he's playing this a bit of a history of his life, and he's playing with Julian Bream in some duets as well. So if anybody's interested, it's a bit of culture on a Friday night.
I know I'll be watching that too, Phil. Yeah, I know you told me about that yesterday, and I've put a reminder in my phone for that. Yeah, I'm a big fan of both Williams and Bream, so two of my favourite guitarists. So it's definitely well worth a watch. Yeah, it's two masters of the classical guitar there. Yeah, for sure. All right, okay, Sean, can we check in with you and how things have gone for you this week?
Okay, I'm not doing long sessions. I'm doing short sessions. Half an hour sessions or an hour sessions at most. And then maybe doing something later in the day, and it's working out a bit better for me. Technically, I think.
So what are the benefits you've seen there, Sean?
Yeah.
What are the benefits you've seen there?
It keeps the practice fresh and I don't get bored.
Yeah. So doing varied practice, like doing different things.
Yes, the one thing I've picked up on this that you kind of recommended I do, which I know I should have been doing more of, was practicing with a metronome. And I was always put off that because it's difficult to get into. But I think the benefits in the long term outweigh the difficulty originally,
Yeah.
So I'm practicing more with a metronome, and
so
I recommend that to everybody else, to be honest. I know Phil does it a lot.
Does it feel like a distraction when you first use it?
Yes, when I first started to use it, I had the left hand to think about my right hand, the music on the page, and then this thing tick-tocking in the background. That's just too much.
Too much to think about.
Yes, it was too much to think about. But I really need to use it more now. And so I've started using it more. And
what's changed? What's changed there, Sean? Like from it becoming a little bit of a distraction to now like a tool that you use regular? Has there been a shift there?
It's to improve. It was initially, we discussed about improving the speed across the frets, and to play whatever piece of music very slowly first, then increase the speed on the metronome and practice until you can play at that speed, and then gradually increase the speed again. And it's a way of improving that you can actually see for yourself,
So you're using it as a tool also to measure your progress.
Yes.
Yeah. And increase speed.
Kind of working.
Yeah. And does that feel like you're making progress? So once you see, obviously if you up in the speed, you can see the progress.
It's given me what I think I'd lost in playing the guitar. I wasn't seeing benefits for the practice I was putting in, and so I was losing a bit of soul, the soul.
So you was putting like all the, you was really putting lots of practice in, but not much progress was happening.
I wasn't seeing any progress, no measurable progress. Now, at least with the metronome, I can see measurable improvement.
Yeah. So that what we measure can be improved upon.
Yeah.
That goes in anything. So if I think what we should do is maybe a session on, future group meetings is a session on using the metronome and how to use it as a tool, as opposed to it feeling like a distraction.
Yeah,
Does anybody else here use consistently use a metronome?
I used the metronome a bit. The one tip that you gave me was don't set it to start the beat at the beginning of the bar. So if you get out of time with it, you can pick it up without stopping again. You know, because if you get out of time with, you know, it beeps that you started beginning of the bar, and that's beeping away. That completely distracts you. Yeah. But I find it a lot easier just setting a beat and trying to play to that beat.
It's just being more efficient in your practice. You don't have to keep waiting for beat one to come around. You can just jump straight back in. Yeah.
And it's less distracting. You know you've gone wrong, but at least you've got a chance at least recovering.
Yeah. Yeah. So Sean, that sounds like, you know, you're making progress there. So keep that up, you know, and also, you know, be aware of what you're trying to achieve there. You know, what's the speed I need to get to, where am I at, and what are the steps I need to do to keep progressing up this ladder to get to, you know, say if it was 160 beats per minute and you're at 120, you know, what do I need to do each week to get to 160? Do I need to up it by a 5 or a 10? You know, does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, Rosemary, how things going for you this week with your guitar playing?
A little bit like Michael, really. I'm perhaps, you know, I'm not consistent with my practice. I start doing other things, but okay. I like it. You know, I'm doing that. I'm learning those, reading the notes and that Spanish study. So.
Okay, and how's that been for you? Are you enjoying that?
Yes. Oh yeah, I like doing it. But I just like. Sometimes I just do other things and I think, oh, I'll do it later. And then, you know, I've got to be more consistent with my practice.
Does anybody...
It's always been an issue for me for some reason. I don't know why, because I listen to all you people and you're all practicing away for hours and I'm thinking, oh, wow. So, and I heard Michael say that before. I thought, that's me a bit, you know.
Paul, I know you're really consistent with your practice. Do you want to jump in here and give some pointers for Rosemary? I think you might just need to unmute your microphone there.
Yeah, I try to be consistent. It's sometimes it is difficult, and I try and set a time. Because I'm on furlough at the moment, it's easy for me to practice in the afternoons. I like practicing in the afternoons because it's just easy for me to do. When I'm working, I do have a set time. When I get home from work, I make sure that I've had my tea and everything. By 7 o'clock, I sit down and I start practicing. And I try and make that every day. Come week, I do have a day off a week. I might pick a Friday or a Sunday where I might just have a bit of a go, but I don't really practice. So I do give myself a break. But basically, I try and stick to a practice routine. I find that's better for me because otherwise, it's like you say, you can easily get distracted with other things. It's dead easy to do that, you know. So that's what I try and do. I just have a set routine. That's when I'm working. When I'm not working, I do it in the afternoon. I'll have a go at afternoon then. I've got more time. I've got more leisure time, you know.
Would you say you've formed a habit around that?
Yeah, when I'm working, definitely. Yeah, definitely formed a habit when I'm working. By 7 o'clock, I've sat down and I'm doing my practice. Now, I might do an hour. Sometimes I might do an hour and a half. And if I'm lucky, I'll do 2 hours. You know, I'll definitely do an hour.
Do you find once you're with the guitar, it's easier? You know.
Yeah. Once you get hold of it and you get going, that's. And then sometimes I think, well, I'll just do an hour tonight, but because I've got hold of it and I've got into it, I'll do an hour and a half. I might even do a bit more, and then you know, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Once you get hold of it, it's better.
Yeah. So some pointers there, Rosemary, is once the guitar's in your hand, you know, you probably find you'll do more practice. Yeah.
Because after the lesson I have with you on Monday, I carry on then because I'm into it, you know, and I carry on doing playing. And I think, right, why don't you do this tomorrow morning? Pretend you've got a lesson or something, and then I think, oh, I'll do it later. You know. But I think it's a good idea perhaps to. Because if you can form a habit of a time, that might work. Actually.
Yeah, definitely. There's a really good book I can recommend, which is called Atomic Habits.
Oh yeah, I've seen that actually.
I'm about halfway through the book, and it's not to go into too much detail here, but what some of the stuff I've learned there is that if you attach new habits to old habits, that's a really good way. So let's say, for instance, you have a habit at 12 o'clock, you make a brew and you do that every day. Okay, that's a habit. Then you attach a new habit. So a new habit could be after I've made this brew, then I'm going to do 5 minutes practice on guitar.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other one is to write down what you're going to do. So another one could be like, I'm at 1 o'clock or whenever it is, I'm going to practice guitar, and you put the time and the location. So that's quite a good way of doing it, is to write things down and then attach it to habits you already have.
Yeah, it's a good idea, that.
Yeah. So then when you make a brew, you'd be like, oh, it's guitar after this. For instance, you get the idea.
Yeah.
Then over time, practicing guitar at 1 o'clock on that day will be a habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it takes about 5 weeks to form habits.
Right.
Yeah. That's the science. It's what scientists say. So. All right. Okay. So what we've been through today is kind of, I guess, like consistency of right hand is important to reflect how consistent your songs and pieces will be. Okay. And also going over practice is try to be really consistent when you practice each day. And if you struggle to do that, then attach it to habits that are already in place. Using a metronome as your friend rather than a distraction. Befriend your metronome, and use it as a tool to measure speed and progress. So that eliminates your frustration, because if you're not seeing the progress, you're not measuring the progress, the metronome is good for that. Okay. Is there anything else I've missed here? No. Okay, we've got about 6 on my clock here before it cuts out. We've got about 6.5 minutes left. Does anybody want to add?
Just something I'd like to say, probably to Rosemary, really. I got a great book, Improve Your Sight Reading, by Paul Harris. I got the grades 1 to 3 and 4 to 5. Now, I wished I'd had that book when I started, because it's opened my eyes about sight reading in terms of doing exercises and just the way, if you were doing a grade, that you would actually look at that piece that you're presented with to play. It's a really, really good book, and I'm using it quite a lot. I do a lot away from the guitar now at the moment, in terms of tapping rhythms, looking at what key things are in, looking at bits of music, especially in this book. Definitely worth a read, that one.
So is it one book grades 1 to 3 and one book grade 4 to 5, right?
Yeah, I get my stuff from Ackerman Music. $7.99 it was. Best $7.99 I've ever paid. It really is a great, and you could do it like when you're on the settee. If you're not going to be practicing with guitar, many a time I'll get the books out and go through it, tap the rhythms out, and it's just laid out. It's just really a good book. I think you know something about that, don't you, David?
Yeah, I know they did it for other instruments, so they must have just brought a guitar version out, because I know they had one for like piano and violin. So I've heard of those, but the guitar one, it's new to me, so I will be checking that out. It sounds ideal. I know Paul Harris stuff is top, is really good.
The best thing is too that it is made for the grade, so you've got loads of specimen, basically what you'd actually get in a grade exam. So you know, it's all in the right format kind of thing. You know, I found it really, and there's loads, like I said, there's loads of little tests you can do yourself. That you've got one line, I think it's 140 lines of little tests in one book.
Yeah.
That sounds
great.
good.
Thanks for sharing that, Chris. That's
What
really
was that?
good.
Macmillan Music, did you say?
No, Ackerman. That's the firm I got it off.
Ackerman. Right.
Ackerman. It's a really good firm, by the way, too. Most of the books come next day, or the
Online.
2 days.
Yeah.
Online, yeah. I've got not an account as such, but I've registered with them.
Yeah.
And they're a really, really good firm.
All right,
and there is 4 and 5 too. I've although we talked about me doing grade 5, haven't we, David? So I'm kind of trying to work towards getting my sight reading really up to speed, and these books are really helping.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay, we've got about 3 minutes left. Okay, sorry, I only get 40 minutes on Zoom when you do a conference like this. Okay, so what I want to just suggest here, that I mentioned this to you, Phil, on Monday. I was thinking about doing a one-off workshop where you can have your guitars. I've got my guitar, and for an hour I show you a warm-up routine and using different finger combinations, working on finger independence, and we can do this as a group. Just raise your hands if that would be of interest to you.
Yeah. Well, I'll go for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that means that I'll set all the cameras up on. There will be. It's just a one-off, just a small fee for that. So is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
What I will do is, after I've recorded it, I will upload the video to my website, and then it'll only be you guys will have access to that. Okay, then you can rewatch it. And what my aim is to give you like a perfect warm-up routine before you practice, where you can go through different finger combinations on your right hand, working on relaxation and posture, and then also the left hand positions, where I can go through simple exercises like not using your thumb, using the upper body and all that stuff. Just things that are cropping up for people. So, and then I can put all that into a video, and you'll have all that information. So I'll put that into motion then, and I'll send out messages and emails for that. And when it's going to be, more than likely it will be on a Friday. Is that okay? Everyone, is everyone up for that?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, this could cut out at any minute because it's just saying I've got less than a minute. So I will say my goodbye. And I look forward to seeing you in your lessons. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.